Okay, little Roo. You're a good girl. We're finished with phase one. Pretty happy with how this all turned out. We had to really get tough about lumber quality with these deck boards. I don't like to see a lot of knots, or at least if that's the look that we're going for, we have to make sure we get as much as we need with very few knots. So I think we made out all right. Everything's finished on its end, rounded on all the sides of this opening for the tree. Stairs are complete. We've got a cool little, reveal here on all the posts where they come through. The front edge is flush with the surface. There's a couple fasteners there that look kind of chic, and I just think it looks so, well thought out with regard to that, or as a result. We got started with shake, but that kind of has to do with what we're going to use for trim, and so I just held off for now, and we'll button this up when we come back and do that. Pergola lumber is the major issue here. That, and I'm way behind my scheduling, so we'll go to our next deck and then we'll come back and finish up. This will all be larch up here with a higher section in the middle, lower on two sides, and signature kind of balustrade there, and so then there'll be a piece of repeating balustrade here to even that out, and it will all sort of have something to do with the arch of the door, which we were really lucky to get. Now inside, we've taken down the bubble. It's still just a rough door install, but we'll match we're going to stain the door, and I was thinking we'd had to match baseboard, but we may just go with a clear or something that will make it a little darker, but that's sort of the look of the hardwood in here and stuff. So that'll need a little drywall trimming, and then at least we'll poly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask her to leave these milky transfers on the glass, so all we have to do is carefully tape edges to do that, and that'll be like pre-mask. We'll just leave it on. So the last thing we'll do is take those off, and you'll get a full kind of clear reveal of the whole project. And obviously we'll come back in and tie into the ceiling. We've got an outlet here to do, but we'll do that. We'll trim outside, we'll put the pergola up, we'll put in balustrade, and then next year we'll stain, which will really be something to see. But for now, and she can get some things, the grass may be seeded, and I think she wants to work on her landscaping now. She knows where the limits of stuff are, and there's only one irritating thing so far. This area here too, it looks pretty good for right now. Pretty pleased with that. But any kind of boards that go rogue on us or anything between now and when we come back, we'll fix when we come back. The only thing that irritates me, because I knew that my rim joist would be my fascia, and that I wasn't going to cover it with an appearance board, so I chose beautiful clear specimens all the way around, so that framing was, look at that. I think this is really nice. We are getting some splitting here, so I'll fill that when it's done drying. I'll fill that with construction adhesive, or actually what I'll use is OSI polyurethane beige. It's a really nice color match, and it stays flexible and bonds well, and should fill that and keep the weather from penetrating. So the thing that irritates me is that I didn't button past this right. This should have passed the end of that, so the end grain was over here around the corner. I will sand it up and get rid of that black sealant when we come back. But, and then maybe cut the tape overhang. Oh, where is it? Right there. The tape overhang that you can kind of see from this angle. But we'll get this is all packed nice with the plate compactor, and grass should grow easily up onto it. But it should be, a nice easy step up here. And it leaves room for her to do more flagstone or whatever for a walkway. So I think it's just a nice place to leave off. There's enough stairs here to use, despite the fact that this and the house are at an obtuse angle. The ends were ripped at the same distance away, which hides that fact, and we're about 2 inches from the house right along. We have the intake for the or actually I think that's maybe the exhaust for the furnace anyway, and the intake's pointed down, vice versa. Radon pump sitting there, finished around. And it's just the nature of the beast. We'll clean up this sealant and stuff and everything. Just like things to become a little seasoned and see if anybody's going to give us trouble immediately. For example, this is a bit twisted and we'll have to reef him around when we come to do pergola. But that stuff's just in the lumber, and you got to kind of let it come out and then deal with it. if you can't get to everything fast enough when it's green. But I'm pretty freaking pleased here. Rue seems to be enjoying things. We tucked any leftovers back there, and I'll take her garbages out when it's garbage day. And we're ready to come back probably late November. All right. Thanks for watching. Get ready for the next deck, and then we'll be back for this project. We'll see ya. Hey, welcome back. You know what it is. This is that other deck. Didn't quite wrap it up last year. We ran into problems at the sawmill getting our lumber, but we went to the Amish this year, and that'll be done in a week or two. Pergola lumber. And then we'll put that up. We have a higher section in the middle, lower on either side here. We're going to do an arch like that sort of feature to tie that together. We've got the curved outside corner here. It's looking pretty good. Got some splitting, which is, you know, to be expected, I suppose. It looks black now, and we'll probably fill it with some of that roof and flashing sealer and then sand it off just to keep it from collecting more of the elements over time. And then I think we're gonna stain this. Sorry, I kept trying to say sand. We're gonna stain this for her as well. And there's a little piece here that went rogue. Every once in a while, somebody just doesn't like to play by the rules. But today, we're going to finish, or try to get started finishing around the door. We're going to use plastic moldings. AZAC, if you're familiar with that, or this is Royal. We're going to use the side that looks like textured, like raised grain wood. And we're going to go over that arch top, which is why we got 3 strips here. So, an inch and a little under 3/16. We'll make thirds out of 3.5 actual, nominal 1x4. So that'll measure 3.5 wide now. And you notice when the cuts come back together again, you can completely lose in that texture, which is actually a technique used to curve most types of molding, even wood and stuff like that. Of course, you need a lot more than what you end up with. So like I got a 1x6 so that I was sure to get 3.5 inches out of it, considering kerf, etc. So we'll put the one piece over, and I'll just put a pin nail in either end to hold it curved. I'll load it up with PVC glue. I'll set the second one on, pin it into the wall. Same on the third, pin it, leave it to, actually at that point, down from the top edge, I'm going to put 3 1/4 inch or 3 1/8 inch trim head finish screws, one every foot or so, as well, to combat the tension that's in there. And then I'll just lightly lift it with a little pry bar off those pin nails that will hold it from straightening out, but really not hard. It's not difficult at all to get to lift over the little tiny head on them. And take that piece down, because after I plot the points on there too, on the corners of the door, I'll plot the points on it. Take it down, put the appropriate angle, cross cut, starting at that little pencil line, and then reapply it. And then I can pull numbers and put angles on the straight sides and bring them, slide them up, make sure the angle's looking good, make any tiny changes on it if necessary, and not lose a lot of overall length. And then shoot that on with nails, and then caulk everything in with a nice quad from OSI, white, just to tie in all the inside corners, outside corners. Nail holes I'll even do with that on this wood texture. They say not to do it. They say not to do it because they think that you're going to use white caulk on the white trim, walk away, call it white. You can do it if you paint it all white. Don't do it if you're going to trust everything to stay the same tone, because the caulk will grow mildew after a while, and all those little holes will show up, like that. So anyway, we will be doing that because we will be painting things white, because, well, the door's pre-finished. I know gluing this is going to make a mess. We're going to have something from something imparted on it, dirt or debris. It's too much to ask. Oh, and this is a film, so it's printed, but that's in like a little satisfying film to lift. I'm going to do the gluing with it on and hope that it doesn't melt that film into something that doesn't. See, this is the thing. Now I'll pull the film before I put it up, but then you're dealing with the appearance face and any kind of glue overruns that you smooth off with your finger. If your finger's got dirt and this glue's based in solvent and you just drag the dirt across the white face of it, we're going to end up having to paint stuff. So when I take it off and cut the ends on it, I probably leave it loose. Make sure the side pieces with the ends I put on them, the angles meet in well. Then I'll put them on sawhorses and spray them with white out here on the lawn, and then we'll put them up. Doesn't fix the nail holes. got some thinking to do. I know that the pergola rafters we're going to pre-finish. Probably get down to a point where we finished inside and out around the door. Still waiting on the lumber order. We'll probably wash, brighten, and clean wash, brighten, and stain the deck and the posts way on up there. Maybe just with a brush, since that's pretty easy, and you haven't got to get around where all the beams are connected to them and brush all around that, or spray up into the air. So we'll brush right up the posts. Then all the beams and joists, when we lay those out and process them, put the ends on them, put a bevel or treat the edges of them all around. We will also spray them all one side with stain, flip them, spray them the other side out here on the lawn. And then when they go up, they'll go up stained, which will limit how much masking we got to do on the house and how much dancing around underneath the stain raining down on top of us to look like we went and got a cheap tan by the end of that day. I think that's the smart thing to do. And in the middle there, where we're killing time, we've got balustrade to make over here and fill in. And I think we're going to fill in both sections all the way through here and all the way through there, and put at least a stub railing on this. See, this will be walled off here, but that makes nice risers for plants and stuff. You're going to be doing this curve anyway. It's too sharp to turn here. It's awkward at the stairs end. They did that because that was 20 feet of lumber. That's as far as it went. Anyway, at least a stub out railing here, perhaps one over there and over there. And so we got that stuff to build. But everything else here held up really nicely. Unfortunately, this tree is the type that has all these little fine seeds and seed stems from the flower. Seeds and the flower stems and all the little dried up. That's the stuff that just laces itself together, packs down into cracks like this, and if you don't brush that every year or blast it with air, it holds moisture and becomes edible. It's like tinder for the rotting process, so it's real easy to rot because it has such great surface area for how tiny and feeble it is, and then it provides an easy place for rot to begin, and then it'll work on over into the lumber that your deck's built out of and start working on your deck like infection. So you got to do debriding, and then basically, anyway, not ideal, but nothing a little regular maintenance wouldn't stay up on. All right, back soon. All right, this is going along no problem. I put the first one on dry, just pinned in there. These are all 18-inch or 18 gauge 2-inch brads. Just bang, bend them all the way over to here, put one there. Just called it good enough. And we're going from like house wrap with sheathing to on top of the shingle. I was going to prove out the front face of this and make sure it's nice and flush the whole way anyway, so it doesn't matter that we're not starting on an exactly perfect surface. Yeah, I thought about making a jig and copying this over to do all this on the bench, but it's like at the end of the day, not necessary. So then all I did was, I've been putting the glue on these strips themselves rather than risking it getting onto the pre-finish of the door or anything else like that. You don't know what these solvents will do. They can get on top of this and the end of the post because it's going to be easy to sand or obscured with the rest of the construction. So I'll just get the dauber, try not to get drips headed down both edges if I can help it, all the way to one end, and then strike through it back end to end when everything's wet, just to freshen it up and make it wet again because it is trying to dry on me. And then I come over and start it with a brad into the wall again, bend it over, put another brad into the wall where it's tight. But then, as well as this here, I just managed the flushness, put it where I wanted it, and fired the 2-inch brads down into the top edge. Right along, and I've got drips of glue and stuff. This is going to get a cursory sand real quick before it gets painted. Anyway, it's working like a charm, and we'll come back when we've got further. All right, 3 strips, 3 rips, kicking through screws, making trips. Time to put some kind of angle on the 2 verticals, as well as on the end of the curve that bisect this angle. Who knows how the hell to do that? Well, put the T or the speed right there, match the angle. That looks like 30 would be there. Yeah, it looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. Usually things are a relatively round number. And then I wish I could hold everything together, but say I put a straight edge on here and carried it over there, I could scribe it exactly through the point, and I'd have lines on both ends if I did the reverse over here. So I got a number to set the miter saw for the straight sticks, and I got a line to be sure and be dead nuts on for the curve, and then I could take it down, go do that on the bench, come back, and everything ought to fit real nice. Meanwhile, I'll scribe these shingles while I'm up here. The rest I'll cut to fit, but since those were up there already, and then those can be cut. Neat. Woo! All right, well, we got the door trimmed. 3 rips. Careful miters. Shims. Dialing this in. Caulk and paint will make it what it ain't. Got some dirt imparted up there that I was talking about. Some glue. Did some sanding. Covered up some nail holes. Various. Oh, and we got started with cedar shake. The pack is really an underlayer pack. That's my high level of craftsmanship there. I'll fix that. But really I need 100% clear, and I used, you know, everything out of the underlayer pack that had just, you know, I'm gonna chuck this whole thing. He's been voted off the island. Anyway, I don't mind a little hole like that. It adds a little character. There's a couple on here. This is actually a really ugly job somebody did of shingling. Probably because there isn't plywood on there. That is a nice way to make it a nice flat surface. And then you can snap lines on. Now these lines go downhill. I don't know. Anyway, status quo. We're gonna meet or exceed it. So we got that far with what was in the pack that's acceptable. I'm gonna go out and get an ordinary clear top level pack of shingles so that they're to finish up. Those ones I put up with face nailed last year with roofing nails. That's all I had. I'll replace those with some finished nails or something that's I'll shoot those in with something that I can fill the nail holes with, that OSI quad. Anyway, this little lip will return the clap for us more professionally than just the thickness of the trim itself. And overall, the corners, when we paint that all out, now I did a color match with the door white, which you can see is a little bit warmer than the actual trim raw tone. So we'll paint that out and we'll put some more shingles up, and then we'll paint those. I think we made that color last year, that yellow. And then we will go inside and fix that up, and then our lumber should be ready for the pergola. And if we don't get there, I'm thinking I'm going to wash, brighten, let it dry, and stain the whole deck and up the posts. And then I can start working on the pergola lumber, and when it's ready, we'll stain it on the sawhorses. And then it'll just be assembly like a kit. Alright, we got the white paint on. I went from on the siding over the caulk, around the trim itself, and out onto the edge of the pre-finished door. Because I just felt like a natural line would be here on that shadow line to go from this white to that white, instead of trying to cut white to white. That is a little easy. It's possible slightly to see it here now, but over time whites change, and if I do a sloppy job because I can't see the difference between this white and the pre-finished white door, now when you can hardly notice it and it weathers for a few years, the sloppy job's going to start showing up, and I've seen that time and time again. So I'm going to get 2 coats. This is the first coat. I'm going to get 2 coats of white from here all the way around and out to there, and then it'll break on the shadow line and the door is pre-finished. It's not quite exactly the same, but that is okay. Both as a rule of thumb and on this particular project. I slopped some onto the raw wood shake. There's rough areas and stuff like that. I'll sand those. Showed me a couple pinholes that I didn't see, and it'll make the color more correct when I put the yellow on there, and it'll act as a primer. It won't hurt that it's not technically primer. Primer is mostly just a cost-effective way to seal up, or at least raw wood and drywall primer is a cost-effective way to seal up the surface. So any kind of paint will do. It's mostly just to save using paint in that application. But here we don't want to go buy more primer. We just bought 1/4 paint and we use it as primer there. And we got the drywall seams taped. Put board up, 1 piece there. Managed to do the other piece in 8 feet. It was 8 feet exactly from the inside corner of the wall to this seam here. So I actually opened both doors after I made a rectangle as big as I needed and slid it in here until it sat there. And then I scribed the wood jamb. But of course, we're going to need to extend the jamb out so that the edge of this is flush with the edge of the drywall, which it is not right now. Anyway, so I offset that 1 inch just by eye. And when I cut that line, I have the room that I need. and then the piece on the side was just filled in. And I saved myself digging apart the shoe and the baseboard there. This is going to be a drywall transition rather than not a drywall transition, but I just assumed do it this way. That's a personal choice, I guess. So taping is just rough. I did it with 45-minute hot mud. That'll kick off here, and I used icy cold water, so it'll take half an hour to gel at least, and it'll be done in an hour, but still wet. Now I've got a few days. I'm going to excavate tomorrow, then it's the weekend, then excavate Monday, then I'll be back Tuesday, so it'll be nice and dry, powdery. You tell them, Rue. And we can do a cursory sand, and then our first real coat of mud to try and finish this up. That's right. And we'll throw some paint on outside so that we're basically done out here. Got some questionable quality over here, but it's not our purview. All right. This floor peeled off and went downhill quickly, starting around about here. It's like a 5/8 distance here from this threshold that I installed to the floor, and then it quickly became more like 3/16 here, and was sort of 3/16 the rest of the way. So I ripped into the remaining threshold that I cut off of the original threshold part that I bought. It was like 5 inches wide. So I ripped 2 inches off the taper side, and I chose to go out to this final detail on the trim, not to cope to it, and call that good enough, because the face of that sat a little bit open from the end of the finished flooring. There was a bit of a gap, and just covering the distance from jamb to jamb looked kind of weird, and I didn't want to cut. You can always cut more off. You can't add it back, really. So I just needed a custom, like, finishing coped piece. So I went into the table saw about to here with 3/16 of an inch sort of left over. Then I shut the saw off, and then I connected the end of that cut out to 5/8 of an inch from the edge of that piece, and cut that with the circular saw. And it's a 3/4 inch thick piece, so it's overall 3/4 of an inch back there, and that's good enough on both ends. So then I came in and tried to find, it was a little too thick on the end, so I just cut that off. I'm content with this now. It's going in to the groove, and we're getting into the groove here, and then I'm going to go down there and cut it off flush, and then I'm going to tap it in flush, and then I'm going to nail through it, and then we're going to set the nails and fill the nails with something, and then go get some polyurethane, and brush a little finish onto this thing. Okay, we're back over here at the little tree deck, which is actually quite large. Rue is rooting around. Jeremy's getting the cleaner washed off of everything here. And so to begin with, we get everything wet. You can do that with a hose or the pressure washer. Get it wet. And then I like to use TWP, which is Total Wood Protection. It's a true exterior stain. You can get the OG stuff in some of the 50 states. You can get the 15, that's a 100 series. You can get the 1500 series in all 50 states because it meets EPA regulations. So I go with the 1500 series in New York State. I've had customers that went through the black market to get the 100 series for their project, and I put it on there for them. I can tell you, you want a respirator and goggles when you put the OG 100 series on. It is extremely irritating to mucous membranes. But I get a 5-gallon kit for generally a good-sized deck, and I use the Restora deck. So the TWP is the stain brand. I get a 5-gallon kit of it plus the brightener and the cleaner. So they offer 2 different types of cleaner. This is Restora deck. This is the slightly cheaper brand of cleaner and brightener. So you get everything wet, you make up this with hot water, pump spray it onto everything. It's a little white and foamy at that point. Then you can scrub that in, or just remove it with the pressure washer, which is kind of equal, whichever way. And so you can kind of see it on there. There's a little bit of suds, very minimal. And then we use the brightener, which truly, like that gray to that before after, that's like seriously what it looks like. It's unbelievable. And it doesn't take very long at all. And so we'll wash off the cleaner, and then we'll follow the directions for the brightener directly with a pump sprayer. treated the entire surface. Rinse with a garden hose. It's not necessary to scrub or use a pressure washer before you apply the brightener. Be certain all remaining gray areas of the wood have been removed with Restore-A-Deck. So this here is where you want to get the old wood off with the pressure washer. So you want to follow the directions, but it's remarkably night and day difference here, where we've got like I would call it like a cover piece. It sat in the sun, turned kind of silvery. It's real dark now, and the stain color we're using is going to give it a little color, but the water is a good indicator of what it's going to look like. And you can see some of these are quite different than others, and so with the brightener we'll equalize all of that. Of course, we got to flip all these and use the cleaner on the other side too. I think we'll probably wash and brighten one side of all of these, and then we'll wash and brighten the other side like right before we go or something. So he's working on the upper part there. As soon as he's got that done, as soon as he's got the whole thing done here, I'll apply the brightener. I think we'll probably rinse off and stain her furniture too. It's a little worse for wear, but it's got some it's very crispy. And the nice thing about the oil-based stains rather than the paint stains, which are basically just paint and they're friggin' garbage, and I don't suggest anybody use them, but they'll give a little more life to these old crispy pieces that are, you know, easy to break like that. The oil will soak into that, the oil-based stain. They'll look a lot nicer, and they'll live another year or two before they're total trash. And we'll do everything, we'll do the deck and everything first, but if there's anything left over, we'll use it up on a rattan furniture. And so this thing is, and then we'll put the rafters up stained, which is going to be a lot easier than trying to pump spray and it blowing all over the house and stuff like that. It's going to be hard enough. We're going to have to mask from the bottom of those windows down and use the pump sprayer to get the posts and beams all stained, but that'll be just fine. Just trying to work smart here. We got enough beams up to straighten out these twisted posts last time, and so it's really starting to come in close to ready to stain here. It's just we can't be here every day and go right along on it, so it's a little bit of stop and start, but stay tuned. Okay, here we are here on the bench with our final steel piece. I just actually traced it onto our router pattern, because of course it does measure out 24 by 24. I drew it in CAD 24 by 24, but I've just found over the years that the more often you can scribe or trace things that have to play nice together, the better off that you will be in the end. I found something here. I was really sick to ruin anything any better than this shitty underlayment, which isn't going to give me that much of an edge. It's going to be one or two times. Really, I need to use it once, and that's the end of it. So and the bearing is only about as thick as this stuff is here. So all things considered, if we're careful, it'll work out for us. I wanted enough surface to get the whole half of the router shoe, or the 3/4 of the router shoe there. It's going to ride on that. So I ended up with this scrap that lays in the shop here. Trace this plug out and cut it with the circular saw to do most of it. Finish the corners to a point just because it's no problem. The router itself will put a round on it, which is what I ended up with. And I figured into my CAD the round that would work out to the cutter, which is a 1/4 inch radius or 1/2 inch diameter cutter that I'm going to use to do the rabbet. And we'll see on the site how I picked this overall size. I started with thinking 2 foot by 2 foot. Then I got down to thinking maybe 16 or 18 inches square would work. But due to the boards and where the rabbet ends up on the board layout, you'll see at the site why I picked this. So we're going to go ahead and zip this out and run it over there. I'll just tack it down, and I'll cut out the boards. I'll apply this template, we'll router in the rabbet, and we'll set the plate down and call it installed. We're back at the tree deck finally. I don't know if I'll show you this before or afterward, but we did this much and got the cover over the AC, and we got Jeremy milled a bunch of these beams for us, did the jigsaw work on the ends and took a scallop out of the undersides of them here. But then all the rafters, I took that down to our friends at Braun Millwork, and they did that big scallop, I think on the bandsaw, or maybe with a router template. But either way, so today we're trying to get beams up, even though there are some rafters. We're actually using the rafter as a lever because we had so much twisting, like in this post here, that we actually applied the rafter with through locks to that post, which actually go into this aluminum kind of nut thing, so everything's sandwiched rather than just relying on the screws in this post. And then we could crank on this, and if you can Sorry to make you dizzy, but you see the strap goes up and over, and we went to the come along on the pickup truck in the driveway to pull on the middle of that, because once we went as far as we could go this way to this post, and we stopped, it was still bowing away from us. So then we pulled it straight, or even a little beyond straight, to continue spinning that post, try and just get into where we needed. And so, like I say, we're over here and up and over just to get that done. But, which is the stuff that goes away and you don't see. It looks like we just threw this up and then threw that up, and it went really smooth. Probably would have gone that smoothly if we were here the very next day after the last steps, but it's been almost a year since we were here last, so things change in the humidity in the water. We'll fill these cracks like we did on the other party deck, and we're gonna put a profile or a shape on the outside corner here. And I probably showed you how we got the outside of the door trimmed. Jeremy's going to take that up, and so here's another case of, I guess you want to be, on the outside of the post. And so then we're actually almost an inch open here. And so if we take the joist over until it can actually be stuck to this post, then we can go back that way with the other end and try to twist this guy, twist that gap shut, and screw it together. I was using ledge lock, which is a prettier, but we'll probably end up using the through lock again with the aluminum nut just to pull that in tightly. We get everything put together here, all the rafters up, and then the sticks that go across them, the rafter, like almost like purlins, and everything's looking really nice and square. I may try to sneak around and replace the silver hardware with the black hardware, or I'll obviously at least paint the silver hardware black. So that's what we're at today. Let's see what this looks like in a little bit. Well, Jeremy's been over here all morning working on staining. There he is, my man. Let's not let Lou out, don't get your fingers pinched. She's got the backyard all cleaned out probably since we've been here last time. Okay, great. Oh yeah. Kind of perfect timing, huh? Just about all done up there.
Yeah, a couple, I can't, it's hard to look up and see what I'm missing.
Yeah, against the sky, right in your eye. Oh, it looks like the front looks a little bit there.
I'm waiting for the other side to dry so I can lean over it.
Yeah, because working from the front here on the stairs. Well, I'll get some footage of us getting some more staining done here. So we got a little game of cat and mouse going on at the job site today. Just came out of the driveway we're trying to pull in. There he goes. Good luck, bud. Well, Chris is here giving us a hand today. Jeremy had to stay at his other job, but we'll take everything we can get now, trying to finish up. I had to check the CAD to see what my layout was for these rafters. It's 16-inch on center according to that, but we also wanted to be directly on the side of these posts. And the posts really didn't have a lot to do with, and they could have, and it's an opportunity here to point to this. If I absolutely wanted my rafter layout to be perfectly spaced throughout, and for it to work out so that the posts belong tight to the side of a rafter when I get there, and that's still on a perfect layout, well, then we could do that in the ground. But we had some trouble here, if you go way back beginning of this series, with putting these posts exactly where we wanted in the ground for different reasons, and you end up pushing that all the way up, and you get into finished carpentry here where we're working with what we've got. And that was what I did with these beams. The beams were used to dial the posts into plumb and square to the surface of the deck and perfectly parallel to one another. And by the time you're done working from the ground all the way up, you've got what you've got for a span between them. And does that perfectly divide out on 16? No. And so, for example, we're going to move this one to the other side of the post, because being over here is an inch or two maybe greater than a typical 16-inch center. And with the busyness here, once we get the purlin ties across the top of it, your eye won't notice that unless you're sitting here daydreaming and you have that kind of a brain already. And that's what we're going to end up doing here. Oh, and over here we haven't even got that one slapped to the outside of the post, so we know that we can start it on the inside, although it's a different span here. But if we're going to what is inboard here on that side, that's another thing we want to consider. We want to be mirror image. So being inboard here helps us with the look. So being inboard here is what we're going to do. And then outboard on the other one, just as we are on the other end there. And then we'll see what we've got to do inside of this to balance it and make sure that we don't end up with a obviously smaller bay on one end of it or the other. In the case of the center area, we put a joist right down the center line of the distance between the posts, which is 3/8 of an inch more open at the front. It was around 110, where at the back it was 109 and 5/8 or something. And so we went center up there and center back here, right down the center line with that stick. And then we pulled 16-inch centers to one side of it and to the other side of it. And in the end, it will look to your eye nice and balanced and symmetrical. And it didn't squeeze this bay, this last one, too badly, where we've got one stuck right on the side of the post. And so everything should look really nice over there too, and balanced in the end. We've got baluster we're going to cut and put in. I've been watching a lot of Deadwood on HBO from like over 10 years ago, but still, I want to say the Gem Saloon has got baluster that has 3 sticks and then one's missing, and then 3 and then one's missing, I think is the layout. That makes it really easy rather than a custom gap between groups of 3. So you just put them all on, mark them all down, and then every 3 you take one and don't install it. We did have to check and see that would be less than 4 inches, because that's your infant head entrapment scenario. So what I did was I went and bought a couple bundles of the baluster, which is 1 1/4 actual. Where's my tape? On my hip. And it's nice to look at them right in the bundle because they're tight side to side and being held to one another because they're bundled, right? The nature of a bundle is bundling. But if you look at this and you look at if every other one was a gap, so baluster gap, baluster gap, baluster gap, there's your 3. Then you skip one, there's your baluster gap, baluster gap, baluster gap. So that's 1, 2, 3, gap, skip 1, and you have another gap, and then you have the next one. So it means 3 together are the gap that you've got is 4 inches. So that means you can't use one of these as a spacer, because you'll end up with a gap when you take it away of equal to 4. It needs to be less. And so these are individually 1 1/4. So we'll use an 1-inch thick material for our spacer rather than just another baluster. So we'll mark this, put that in, stick 1 inch to it, stick the next baluster, screw it, and build them up that way. And then when you take one away every 3, the remaining gap you have is less than 4 inches by just enough to pass your infant head entrapment. They all can just get cut as a group to the right length over there too. And so hopefully this is more complicated than it seems, but it makes for a really dressy baluster that, I stole from the art director, production designer to Deadwood. So anyway, that's what good art really is good observing, good observation skills, and then applying things that you see to the right scenario in the future. So we're doing a little copy in there, but I think in the end it's going to be just the ticket for this is going to be pretty cheap to do. Chris is going to do it, and he's cheap as hell. So back to work. We're back on this giant deck. Chris is putting our purlin sticks across the joists. He started by establishing our center line here based on the posts where they come through the deck. Threw the plane laser through, which put that center line on all these joists. He translated it up to each of these different 3 levels. Put our center purlin stick on, and then we're doing a 16-inch on center layout from that in both directions. That puts our last purlin, where is it? Just there. And we looked at that. It's a good aspect ratio. I didn't want to be beyond halfway from here to there, because that starts becoming like starts taking away from the idea that these are an end treatment and makes them more of a what do you call that, bearing for that last purlin stick. And so we want just to respect all that in the way that it goes. You might be able to make that look work under different circumstances or even here, but we have to make some kind of a decision, and so that's what we're doing. I like the tips of those to be quite long and proud, and you know, be licking out into space without anything else, you know, taken away from that. We're also going to then trim these ends of the purlin stick back to about 1/3 that length, or not even half, just shy of half. So again, they're the star, and then you've got the surface above. Sometimes you go up and up and up and you keep going out and out and out and you keep getting all, you know, in a crown mold kind of a shape, but we're not trying to do that here. We're leaving those rafter ends to be the star of the show. So that means I got to get the rest of the purlin sticks that Jeremy ripped up. No, these were ripped at the Amish, but he routered all 4 outside corners. And so once we have assembled those and we figure out how much of an overhang, we'll snap a line, cut them all off, and use the cordless router to finish up the ends of everyone with a bevel. And thereby they'll be coplanar and you won't have to play trying to set them up. That's not how you do it. You get them overly long, get them up there, and trim them all together. So we'll get some stain on these. I'm going to break out the Fragile. This came last year. This deck has taken a couple years to fully finish because we didn't want to compromise the design. And of course, the cost to realize the design has gone up since 2020. And so she's just been great here. She actually dropped in on my wedding and gave us a nice card and a wedding gift. Our customer here, she's just lovely. She's an ideal TMFX design build customer. And I so feel for her waiting and waiting and waiting patiently for this to be done. And I understand it's less than professional to take this long, but so we are just gonna break out the other 5-gallon pail of TWP in California on Redwood, which we can see got to about there, and we got all that stuff pre-stained before we put it up. And I'll finish this here if I get to it, but today more importantly we get all that stuff stained, and so when it goes up you don't have to spray around in the air or try to brush it and get drips down below. The balustrade, that's a the Gem Saloon style from Deadwood. I just noticed that in the show and thought that'd be great for over here. We could do it with cheap sort of off-the-shelf materials, but dress things up kind of nice. Chris has got it practically started here, and then when we're done, like I say, probably in a previous video, we'll fly right across the top with some larch as a cocktail ledge, which I like to do. No matter where you are entertaining and people are standing, if it seems like something could be set down, people will want to set it down, so we'll just give them a little more of a railing cap to do that. Then I got some 4x6 so we can do a stub out railing that looks kind of sharp. Just gives people a little something to hang on to when they come and go here, and dresses it up as a little detail. All right, better set up the time lapse and get to work now, Chezzy. Chris is giving the sunset rub down to our baluster. As soon as he's out of the way there and I'm not showering him in sawdust, I'll cut this post flush with these here. And you can kind of see that we've got to go pull this left to straighten it out, which will be how we'll get the cocktail ledge on there, and then I will do, which will give this a lot more strength that way. And we've also got some trim screwing to do at the bottom to get that in, because that's just loose and dangling there. And so over here you saw me cut in the post in the corner. I don't know, I laid this out because I was thinking it would be slapped inside the structural rim joist and all of that, or the rim joist in the other way and the rim board in the other. However, that wouldn't put us on the same plane here that the rest of these are, because we want to go down the center with our railing section here. So we had to cut out into the front. And so I thought about notching it in, but then something in me said if it could just hang down some, it would be kind of a cool look. So I'm pleased with that. Put a little back angle on it, and I use the trim router with the chamfer in it, because that will fit in here, even though this blocking and everything's on here. Over here we use the full-size router and a slightly bigger chamfer, and so you can't come back and do that once the railing sections are in there and stuff. So over here, where he stopped short of the railing section here, I'll probably end up trim routering from there down to 5 inches off the floor. And all that'll mean is it'll be a little shallower, and there'll be a little shoulder here between the 3/4 chamfer and the 1/2 inch chamfer, that if you notice, it'll look cool because it'll all occur at the same sort of elevation, because that's where we left off with that chamfer. And I can do this with that as well before I put that railing cap on. So I guess I'll come over and do that much. And I'm gonna try to get stain on the rest of this porch before we walk away today. Chris is about to put the rest of the purlin sticks up. At least they'll be up and out of our way overhead, kind of giving you the sensation of their presence. They still will be, the middle ones attached to the right location on the joists. The ends of these will be locked in because the joists need to be plumb, and we'll do that. And then between the two ends and the middle, we'll fill in the rest of the purlin sticks, which then can be more blindly just screwed into the joist where they lie. If you do that now, just starting wherever and moving your way across, you'll lock in the problems with plumb to the rafters, I should call them, not joists. You'll lock in the plumb problems with the rafters, and if they're curving and bowing, you'll lock that in too. So you wanna go right down the middle of the area and get the ends and everything, just so holding everybody with the fewest amount of attachment points. And then all the other attachment points can just be sort of, again, incidentally, you can connect things without worrying too much about whether it's straight or whatever else. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Otherwise, don't try to build a pergola. And ooh, that's looking really nice. Now that I can fap to. Back to work. Okay, I don't know how fun it is to watch time lapse of two guys wandering around in the dark with headlamps on. So unfortunately, daylight savings time. Oh, you left your chalk line hanging. You got to get that. Oh, you don't have to. We're about done. Yeah, we're gonna call it quits. But we got that railing section on the right there built, and the other one put together and put up. I got that piece of larch cocktail ledge. True 2x8. I just knocked the corners of it with a chamfer. Some stain on there. There's some marks here and there, this and that, but it's just one of those things we can't hammer on it all day, every day. I'm over to Ed's most of the time, but when I can get some help, we come here to continue moving forward. I'm getting pretty excited about. Now the inside of the door needs to be trimmed out, extension jamb. I'm gonna mask the edges of the panes, and it needs to have a brushed coat at least, if not a sprayed coat of poly, because it's just natural wood, along with the extension jamb and the trim. So, and then we can take all of that off and obstruct the window panes for the first time since that door went in. I just mentioned to her it'd be great to leave those because they're gonna help us. Like I just said, they're already pre-masking the glass, but like now it's been years since she hasn't had her beautiful view out of her $4,000 French door. But it's not a bad place to leave off today. Back again next time we can, basically. We're back at the tree deck today. Beautiful day. This is always such a great job site. I was telling Chris, it's just always been the perfect amount of shade. It ends up being breezy and sunny. I mean, I choose not to be here in bad weather, but still, it's a really nice backyard, and I really hope that, the project ends up adding value to it as well. It's been a long time. Since 2020, I think we were talking about this. It's been at least 3 years on the site, if not closer to 4. Last time we did this much balustrade, and I probably talked 18 times now in the video that we cut together over the years about my plans here for these. But I've done this type of like stub or cantilever railing handrail on another deck previously, and I was pleased with it. So I'm just making sure of a few things here. Normally you'd think that you'd want the top of a railing to come in to the same elevation, and in a lot of cases you'll see that. But a lot of times that distance from the deck here should actually be the same distance from that first stair. And so then the railing comes in what appears to be lower than that. And that's because when you get to the bottom, If I started here and came down at that angle, it's awfully high up in my face. I just as soon it down a little bit further. Same here. I did that top edge of this is the same distance from the deck as that railing is, but it's that distance from this first step surface. And it just puts this, at least for me, I'm average height, and Chris is taller by a couple inches than average height. But it feels good to start on it here. When I come to the end, my hand hasn't, really left it. And of course, we're going to cap that with a deck board. Unlike the top cap of the balustrade around here, it's got that heavy larch true 2x8. This is that would be too big here, so we'll go with a deck board. And I probably will I'll rip it to this width. So we're at 3.5 here, so it's probably 4 to here, and 5.5 to the actual width of this post. So we'll go to 4, and I will put a round over on it. And or no, I'll bevel it. I'll put a bevel on it. And I'm also going to follow this around here and up with a bevel, as well as beveling the chin. So this will come down the face. It'll have a chamfer on the chin, and it'll go up that way. And then that whole edge will have a chamfer in and around that curve. And though that's a curve, our overall convention here is chamfer. So again, just something to think about there. You can do whatever you want. It's not going to kill the whole project, but I'm just thinking ahead. Now, the attachment style, you can use 2 fasteners, but the most important thing is not to just run into the wood and hope to grab a hold of it and have people touch and lean on this for forever and have it not, with cycling humidity and temperature and moisture level, have it not end up becoming loose and clattering around. You want to pin it there. And so I use these through lock bolts. They look like a screw. They're pointed. You can just run them in like a screw. And I've discussed them 18 times again on this probably project, but we'll use the through lock because it sandwiches everything and sucks everything down tightly. And you haven't got to drill and do nuts and bolts, which you could do. It'd have to be, well, in this case, it wouldn't have to be larger, but these are designed to replace a 1/2-inch bolt, believe it or not. And so I'll use these. But it's tricky to get, it only tightens up so far. And then the end of it is deliberately covering the pointy end of the screw to make it safe, and this is going to be common in deck building and construction. It used to be like a wooden playground or something, or a tree house. We use those tree house building. However, once I found the right place here where a flat plane for the head, the washer head at the end of this thing, for a flat plane pulls in, how do I want to phrase this? To start with, I was thinking we wanted to pull in there and stop. Well, at this elevation, it's kind of in the way. So then you almost want that back inside, not maybe all the way, I guess, but even just 2/3 of the way would be fine. And so then you got to find out where and how deeply. The other thing you want to make sure of is you want to come in enough so that you're under the plane here. And so I did a bit of figuring here, and I came up with this, and I've got that little tab showing there. And I did the same thing over on this one, the same length hardware, and I countersunk the back with a Forstner bit, and I ended up running out of stroke to draw it tightly before the nut came to the end of it, and it still wasn't completely sandwiched in there. So at this point, I've got to get the next step down in length. And so what I'm trying to say is I have a lot of experience with these, and I'm always pleased when they're finally installed. But the amount of games that I play to make sure of what size hole and where and how deeply to drill so that they work out exactly right and come up tightly and have plenty of adjustability. Because then when you start to repeat the situation, sometimes if it's not perfect, sometimes they won't tighten up too much, or you can't get a hold of the end of it at the same theoretical place in a repeating situation. Most of them can work, and one of them can be a pain in your ass, and you have to get a different length. So the safest thing to do is to just buy the number of fasteners that you need at the length that you think you need, and then by the same amount, one size up and one size down, bring them to the job, use what ends up becoming necessary, and take the rest back, or just hang on to them in inventory like I end up doing. So that's the long and the short of that. I will get that done, and then I got to get the chamfer on it and the handrail cap on there. We're also going to sand the texture off of the large cap. I don't want to lose all of the character, but this is too shabby and shaggy. It's a splinter risk. Chris is putting the purlin sticks on there, and we looked at a variety of different things. Ultimately, there's one in the center line of the deck, and then I think it's a 16-inch layout from one side to the other. You can see him wiggling around up there, which is a product of there being no rack protection in this assembly. And we've also got, I think that this is plumb. The door is absolutely plumb. And I think the post is thereby pretty plumb. But then the window, it might be an optical illusion actually. No, anyway. There's only so much you can do. This house is very, very old. And this door at the beginning of this video, which was years ago now for me, but for you, it may have just been moments ago, really gave us a lot of trouble here because it has to be installed plumb. And we're still not done inside. Woo, this isn't even latched. Interesting. Anyway, we've got the drywall and stuff finished. And it's just a question of putting the slivers of jam in that go from, almost nothing to 1 inch or so here. Oh, we wrote it right on there. And this is from half to whatever I wrote down there. So those have to be added. And then we got to do something to curve across the top somehow. And then I can finally trim it. And then, because I'm obviously capable, I did it outside, but this was done in plastic. And inside we're going to use real wood. So there's that to do. But we're, honing in on that. And I've also got the second layer of beam. There should be one inside and one outside the post. And I skipped the outside one because of another fastener issue. So I may be able to replace those now that I've got the longer ones. Because I guess I didn't have what it was going to take to go through all the layers. And now I do. So I can do that much today. I can put that piece up. So we got some little I's to dot, T's to cross. The town building inspector is not going to let me partially come over here with a railing until it's fully in front of the rest of the stairs here. And it would start and stop on another 6x6, and you put another 6x6 here, and it'd just be weirdly tight. And I was hoping to just let stub out and sort of take up the airspace in front of this fall risk, but she said the kids and little people and stuff can zip and fall down there. So as a matter of technicality, I've got to have railing, and so I'm just going to go straight across through here and just fill the rest of the way. This will end up becoming like terraced or tiers to put plantings or whatever. If you're grilling, you can put your food there and stuff like that. Unfortunately, the walk path up the stairs will kind of turn a corner like this, and these are here as an architectural necessity, and if you use them correctly, they'll look sensical. But some may feel that it's a bit nonsensical, but we maximized the 20-foot deck board there. I could have just stopped the stairs here if there was going to be railing there, but then you end up with just a flat space, which again, you could put a chair or something, or you put the grill there. You can always cut these back and do that. There's a stringer, but I'm not going to go to all the work to decombobulate that now. So, and she said the last thing was she needs this to have a full railing section to here, because you can fall off the end. The stairs themselves is considered monument style, and even this isn't necessary as far as the building inspector is concerned. The homeowner asked me to provide something, so that's what I'm happy with there. But this will have a full section of baluster, and we will put a 6x6 at the end of it as a newel. And so I've got that'll be something I come back to do here, as well as putting another layer of stain on the whole surface. And there'll be likely a few little punch list things to do outside, and probably we'll have the stuff to do on the inside as well. And I've also got to mask the glass and clear coat the inside, and so we can finally ceremoniously take the film off the glass and have the view from inside. I can't believe I suggested that she wait, but it's been years, and she's such a great customer. We've pecked away at this as she could afford, and I could afford the time, and she's diligently just not gotten to that, which I feel badly now. I can't wait to get it clear coated inside so she can look from inside and see all of her domain, which she's gotten these bushes out, you may have noticed, and she's got some other plants here. Look at the size of that hosta. Is that a hosta? Oh, enormous. Don't look at poison ivy out here. Yeah, that is huge. I love that blue type leaf on those. Actually, all the hostas at my house came out of her yard here. They were all in the back outside, and obviously needed to move, and so she didn't want them, so I took them home, and they're doing real well, but not that well. I'll give them a little bit more time and see if I can get them up to that quality and size. All right, back to work. I hope nobody doubts our commitments here, because it's 7:30 almost. I got the railings on there. I got 8-inch through locks, which is what was required. It allowed me to countersink the entire little nipple tip flush, which is probably ideal. We'll have to juice that up with stain when I come back through again. Obviously this will get that as well. I got a sanding operation done with 180 on this larch. So, I mean, it's not splinter proof, but it's far less likely to give you a splinter, and it's still got that great texture. You know, it's velvety, soft, smooth. And again, or not again, but it's going to raise and become splintery as it gets rained on, as it gets sun dried. It's just kind of how that works. But you know, to sand it completely, really the thing to do is if you wanted it milled, you would put it through a planer, and you know, we're not doing that. It's, you know, supposed to go with the look of the rafters overhead a little bit. Speaking of which, Chris has got almost all of them screwed down, unless we have a couple trouble spots. We got some F clamps on over here. So then he pivoted to cutting them down at about 6-inch overhang. Here's his little stubs. So we got a 6-inch overhang coming through, hanging off, and he's going to get that done on this side at some point. Also, we've got the posts to cut off another day, all kinds of stuff to do another day. What was I going to say? Oh, my commitment to this situation. So I get all done with this today, and I used 2x4 underneath it in this way to just pick up, you know, or to establish where to go with it instead of measuring painstakingly and whatnot. Because I had, you know, just checked it over here, and it was snug. I should have known that amount of difference between not being able to put the same stick in there and putting it here and setting this. This ended up high because these were nice round dimensions, same to these. All of that as a best practice. The distances, the spans are different and unique to the span itself, but the top and the bottom are made exact, and thereby we pulled this in more and more to a perfect plumbness. This here is a factor of square, actually. This post is twisted, so the far corner touches, and basically I did put a slight angle on the cap because I was thinking that's what you see. And again, if you watch any more of my content, you find out I'll go, forcing things to be the same length, forcing them to line up, making pieces all equal, and you know, stretching and pulling this whole thing around, because then we're chasing perfection and we're increasing it as we go. We get down to the end here. I can't force this post to twist into square anymore. It's going to do what it's going to do. So when I cut the end of this, I had originally put a perfect 90-degree cut on there, and I brought it in, but I left this thing long because I wanted it to hang over. And when I see how big of a discrepancy there was on, here it is on 90, actually, you can see it. So then I moved over to flush and, you know, found the angle, and then moved over, and we still have a bit of a gap there. But anyway, the point is that this is where you make that concession and you make it look nice. If it looks nice, it is nice. Now the problem is with the 2x4, just below it, I left the 90-degree cut on and cut it short enough to fit into that space, which sits open right there. And as a best practice, that's fine on the other side of this railing, maybe over there. But as we look at the front here, this is what we want to see, right? And this is undesirable. So, you know, we're gonna press on. However, here again, back to what I was trying to say, basically this ended up sitting higher, and when you put the cap on here and you look through this, that didn't carry through. It obviously jumped up. So now, you know what do, because the way that I've been putting these on is I've been anchoring this vertical style sort of 2x4 with 1 2 3 1 2 3, you know, by putting a 2x4 block to represent this, and then one on its edge, and putting the end of this on there, and then knowing once I make this whole railing section with the top and bottom on them, you know, lying down, it'll just slide right in here, and then it's just a question of anchoring the top and bottom here. So anyway, the point is I can't pull these screws out because there's a baluster post here, and all I want to do is loosen this and tap it down to level, because once again, we're at the top level of the finishes. We just want that to come in. Now you put a level on here as a result, and it'll be going downhill a little bit, but no one's going to be at your picnic or your patio deck party with level checking it, or they're going to get slapped. So they're going to just look. Huh?
You took my tape measure.
Oh, is that why it was sticking up? You silly goose. Hang on a second. So since nobody's coming around to the party to measure or to use a level, we can get away with just dialing things in to look good at the end, right? You're welcome. So since that's what we had to do, do I want to decombobulate the whole thing now? No. I can take the screw out of the end of this baluster, and I can put a super long extension on the driver, and I can, if I move that one baluster, I can come in with an angle of attack, and I can take those out and move this thing down. But he's in the way, and he's got a 3-inch screw, and I can't put a screw gun behind it and pull it down and out from the bottom. So I went in. Now I never use the little included bits. I use these bits that have a scallop on them. This is my minimum bit length. You get these with the screws when you buy them, but I basically have no use for those, but they stay in the screw box. And today I could get out my little 1/4-inch ratchet and my little 1/4-inch socket, and I could come up in there and I could loosen it down to, now you need 1.5 inches out of here if it's a 3-inch screw plus 3.5 inches here to clear the baluster. However, if I can get the top, I can pull it over, and then I can go up off of a screw sticking up a little bit. So there's something to be said for that. Anyway, this went down to about there, and I was able to get the baluster out, loosen that, tap it down. I needed to move down 1/4 inch, which was just a minimum amount, enough to reuse the screw holes and everything, and not have to make a new piece, which would have been the next step. Or not even so, because the holes are in this post, are in the post. If you did move 1/8 of an inch down, you're gonna have a hell of a time making a fresh hole right next door to the original hole. So 1/4 was what we needed, which is what made the whole thing worth doing to begin with. 1/4 is just below the holes here, reusing the screws and that, put everything all back together again, yada yada. Now this is gonna look nice when we put that cap on there, and that was worth doing there. So I'll fiddle around when it makes sense, and we'll just skip over things like this when it's just one of those things. You got to start figuring what to do. Now we got another whole day here, at least with both of us. I got to make the railing section here, and we've got to get staining on all of this stuff. Chris will have a few things left, and we got to cut the post short, and then the inside scenario is another whole thing that we're gonna not even keep talking about anymore, because I'm sure you're tired of hearing it. So just a great day on the job site. What beautiful weather we have. What big teeth you have. What big pieces of larch laying over here that'll get grown into the yard, and someone will roll their ankle like the, oh boy. Oh man. I forget about all this stuff over here. I don't even know what this is, but they're like steel spikes. Ooh, if it was all ground cover over here, and you didn't know after you bought the house for years, and then you're running around and somebody leaps to catch the football into the ground cover, it'll kill you. I really am loath to leave that there. It just keeps me up at night. Here's another one you can't see. Maybe I'll set the phone down and pull them out of there. I'll at least clean the wood up. So I did pull those out with the locking pliers. That was easy enough. They weren't all that long, but I feel way better about that. You're welcome to whoever buys the house and doesn't suffer the consequences of not knowing that something like that is there. I don't think it was my customer at all here, and if it was just because she didn't have the ability to get it back out of there or anything. But it's just makes me think of the irresponsibility of landowners sometimes coming up on a farm and knowing about all the different trash that people just throw out into the back 40 and then move on or die or sell it or forget. And there's just hazards to safety and health kind of all over the place that you want to do what you can when you find them. I'm just going to straight put these in the trash bin.